And right, we would like to officially welcome, is it Mahdi Gilbert? Is that the right way to say it?
Yes, it is. Mahdi Gilbert, although here in the US, they often call me just Mahdi Gilbert.
Oh, I thought it was Mahdi Gilbert, but are you Canadian?
I actually am Canadian. I'm French Canadian. That's where the Gilbert comes from. Uh, in the US, most people just use it as Gilbert, but it is Gilbert technically. And
Okay,
right,
well,
actually, I just go by Mahdi the Magician, just because it makes
Mahdi
it.
the Magician. Cool. Okay, well, just so that I can get everyone up to scratch with where we are, Mahdi is a magician who prides himself on doing various types of magic. But in particular, what came to my attention was a video clip on Facebook where you were on Penn and Teller's TV series Fool Us. And you went on and did a very simple card trick. And it involved 6 cards. It was 3 red, 3 black. You placed them in alternating order. So it was red, black, red, black, red, black. You asked one of the, I think it was Allison, you asked her to pull her fingers apart and place them one on top of the other. And it went from black, and then all red. And when you flip over the cards, they had mysteriously become all black and all red. And Penn and Teller, who are experienced magicians, should have picked up what you did very easily. But the problem is they were looking to see how you did it with hands. And since you don't have hands, excuse the pun, you completely stumped them. So can you tell us a little bit more about that experience? And then we're going to go into how you got into magic and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I had never met Penn Teller previous to that, but one of my friends who's a magician was working on the show as an advisor. They have a couple of magicians who work on the show to advise who should go on the show, and they asked me to come on the show, and I was a little reluctant because I hadn't really done too much television, but I said yes, and they flew me out to Las Vegas and put me up in the Rio, and I was there for about a week. And the process is you're busy every day, so you're either performing your routine in front of the producers, or rehearsing, or being interviewed, and then you go out on stage the night of, and you have to perform for them. And for me, the trick that I chose is one of my favorite tricks, and it's something that I challenged myself with ever since I was 17 to learn card magic. So this was the most complex piece of magic, using a lot of dexterity. And the magic that I'm talking about, by the way, it's not, like many people have different ideas about magic. It's for entertainment. It's nothing to do with real magic or anything like that. It's not real magic. It's just little tricks with cards that people like for entertainment, like you put something in one hand over here and it jumps to this hand. It's all stuff that are fun, but usually it requires a lot of dexterity and a lot of practice. And there have been books and people teaching this stuff to their students for hundreds of years. But for me, I came into it not knowing how to do this, not even having any instructions. There was nobody able to teach me, so I had to sort of come in and learn this stuff myself. So for me, I wanted to do the highest sort of level of that in front of Penn and Teller with the most simple trick, with just 3 red cards and 3 black cards, and do something so simple to see if they could even fathom the hidden dexterity that I was using in the performance to be able to
Well,
make the magic happen.
I'm amazed that you say hidden dexterity because you don't have hands. So what dexterity are you referring to?
Um, sleight of hand. So there's 2 narratives when you usually are looking at magic. There's a narrative which is sort of the outside presentation. You're seeing outside of, outside the curtain, and then there's
Mhm.
stuff going on behind the curtain. So every single time that you see a magician doing something or moving something, there's usually a secret action taking place or something secret happening that you're not aware of, almost in an invisible thread
Mhm.
going through the same thread as the story that you're seeing visually. So when I say hidden dexterity, that's what I mean, in which I was doing a lot of work that you weren't seeing in the stuff that you were seeing. There was a lot of stuff secretly happening, but it was done in a way that you can't see it.
Aha. And I suppose that's the art of misdirection, where you get someone to think that they're actually watching your hands, and while that's going on, you've got two little red balls, and you're moving them and take them out of your pocket and putting them in position so that when you do the hand swap, mysteriously an extra ball appears. I get that. But remember, once again, you're sitting without hands. So that makes it a little bit more challenging as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, misdirection, I think, is used to describe a lot of magic. I don't know if it's proper, but it's not so much distracting people to look somewhere else, but it's more showing them something the entire time, and they think that they're following a story, but there's also a secondary story that's going on that's completely invisible that makes the magic actually happen.
So
And
let's
that's
go. I want to go back a bit. I want to go back to when you were a youngster. Um, what made you fall in love with magic? And then why would you think, without hands, that that was the actual thing you wanted to challenge yourself with? Why not maybe go into doing mental magic, where you use your mind instead of your hands?
well, okay. So starting off sort of at the beginning, it was never my intention to do magic at the beginning. I remember hearing about magic from my friends who would see magic on TV, and I didn't really have TV growing up, so I could only hear about it secondary from different people. And when the internet started becoming more and more available, I would go to my library and different places, and I would start watching these magic videos that I had heard about, and I didn't know anything about magic. So the magicians I saw, everything just amazed me, and I thought, oh my gosh, I got to figure out how to learn this. So online they had little message boards and forums and things like that on Yahoo and other
Mhm.
platforms. Long dead now, but I would,
The IRC channels and
yeah,
the good old
everything.
days.
But I would go on and I would ask them like, oh, this is my situation. I don't really have hands. Um, but I saw this trick or this person do this magic thing. Do you think that I can do it? And everybody I asked who, I thought were really smart magicians because, I was a kid looking for advice on the internet, were telling me, no, no, it's impossible. It's impossible. So for many years, I just felt it was completely impossible for me. And I also felt like there were a lot of things impossible for me in my life. I thought that there were many things that I wanted to do that I would never be able to do. So I just had this feeling of like wanting the impossible in my life because so much was impossible. And that's why I originally liked watching magic, just because it made me feel for a second, even though I was seeing somebody else do something impossible, it made me feel like I could do the impossible too, just through seeing that, even though I wasn't doing it. Um, and so I was just a fan for many, many years. And when I was about 13 years old, I saw a magician on the internet. His name was Darren Brown,
I
and
know Darren from the UK.
yes, from the UK. But I didn't see him in a magic video. I just saw him in a video, and I didn't know what it was. It was sort of like mind reading, but
Yes,
he was about
he,
psychology and
he
hypnosis.
does a lot of that kind of stuff. He's quite entertaining.
And so when I saw him, I was flabbergasted. First of all, I loved what he was doing. It all had to do with people's minds and getting people to do things or forget things or remember things. And it was just, for me, I felt, okay, I don't have hands or feet. Maybe I can't do the sleight of hand stuff, the the stuff that I love to do in magic. But here's this guy doing all this stuff, and all he's using that I can see are his mouth and his brain. And I'm like, okay, well, I have a mouth and I have a brain.
Hmm.
Maybe I could learn this. So I started when I first started to do magic. Um, really, getting into it, I just did tricks based around memory and psychology, and it was all mind reading stuff that had nothing to do with dexterity. So that's what I did from maybe ages 13 to 17 years
But
old.
but now you see what worries me is that here is a guy that is interested in magic asking how can he do certain things, and people are saying it can't be done, and they shoot you down before even giving you a chance. And had they been more encouraging and said to you, listen, I don't know if it's possible, but I'm sure that if we are creative, we can find a way, would that have changed the course of your future?
I don't know. It's interesting. I really don't know, but I remember so, and I can tell you from my own thoughts, who I knew somewhat about this. I even myself was thinking, this is impossible. This isn't going to work. So, having somebody else think that it's possible encouraged me. I don't know if it would have been the right thing because it was so outlandish and I mean, of course there would be some simple magic tricks that anybody can do. But I don't know if it would have been right for somebody to encourage me to to go as far as I've gone. Maybe, I couldn't have gone as far as I've gone. Nobody really knew. It was uncharted territory.
Sure. And then, so you obviously did a little bit of mental magic, and then you decided, I'm going to go for sleight of hand because, hey, no one else without hands is doing it. So let's see how far we can get. Is that what happened?
Oh, no, I mean, so I was doing it for a couple of years as a teenager, and I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I was having a lot of fun with it. And um, and there was a thing for me which it was so isolated. Everything that I was doing was only in people's minds and in their imaginations. And I didn't just want my magic to be abstract. I wanted it to be real. I wanted it to be something that people could see and that they could touch and that they could feel. I wanted it to be in the real world. So I said I have to move away from this mind reading stuff and get more into doing magic with real objects. And so when I was 17 years old, I decided to learn card magic, and I just would sit up all night in the dark with my deck of cards and try to figure out stuff and try to learn from stuff. Of course, it was very difficult because none of the techniques that were ever written about or created were created for a magician like me. They were all created for magicians with two hands.
Do you get a lot of attention from other magicians and obviously the press when you're putting on a performance?
Yeah, it's funny. The first magic convention that I've ever really been to was in 2010. It was in San Diego, and I went there and I met all my heroes and stuff. I was 20 years old, and I had only been doing sleight of hand for maybe 3 years, but I knew a lot about magic because I had been doing it for, about 7 years. So even though I didn't have my techniques fully there, I could still do some stuff, and I was really smart about it. So I got a lot of attention from all the magicians, and yeah, and then from there I just went on and getting more press. Of course, the press loves it because it's something that's completely unique and that's what the press loves. Something unique and something interesting.
They love a good story, and you're not afraid to push that because it's good for publicity.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing for publicity and also for people to see it. People to see something that is more than just an ordinary magician who it's something extraordinary.
I believe so. I mean, when I watched the Penn and Teller episode, I was completely amazed because, I won't say I'm a magician because that would be a gross overstatement, but I do dabble a little bit in mathemagics because I like the fact that you can do some cool mathematical tricks And unlike most magicians, I tend to explain some of it to the kids because I want them to use it as a tool. And what I find interesting is that obviously, you know, magic is something that just it creates a sense of wonder, and people are intrigued by it. And when I watch a magic show, the first thing that happens is I want to know how they've done it, and I try and work it out, and I spend a lot of time trying to crack the code, and is he writing it with the back of his thumb, whatever. And I watched you on Penn and Teller, and I mean, I suppose I could watch it in slow motion, frame by frame, and try and work out what you were doing. But I mean, you need to show us your arms. I mean, just so that people know that you're not using fingertips to do those kinds of tricks.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it's a funny thing that you mentioned, in mathematics. Some of the earliest magic tricks actually come from old mathematical books that were written by monks and shared in monasteries, because back then nobody really got educated in, you know, the Middle Ages, and a few hundred years ago there was no formal education for everyone like there is now. So these monks in the monasteries were learning arithmetic and different mathematical principles, and they would actually create little puzzles and magic tricks to fool each other with and to practice their math skills with. So I think the earliest one I've seen maybe is from a book in the 1400s.
Wow.
So it's interesting how that history correlates with mathematics, and it's a small thing, and there have been people doing things with math for hundreds of years, which and putting magical presentations on it. There's a great book by Martin Gardner.
Oh, Martin Gardner is the legend. He really is.
Who wrote a lot about mathematics and math and magic that you could do with it. So definitely anybody who's interested in learning stuff that anyone can do and that's really clever, look up Martin Gardner and his books, which are pretty readily available, I believe.
They are, and in fact, he's got a group called Gathering for Gardner, and every year a group of magicians, mathematicians, artists, people just get together to celebrate the life of Martin Gardner, and they do puzzles and brain teasers and all those sorts of things, which is quite an exciting event to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
So now I want to go step back from the magic a little bit. You obviously, without hands, have certain limitations. But you're on the phone, you're sending me emails, you are doing a whole bunch of things that one would expect you'd be able to do with hands. So how are you bridging that gap to be able to do those things, accomplish those tasks?
I don't know, you know, probably seems a lot complicated, a lot more complicated for you guys, just because it's hard for you to imagine. But most of the stuff that I do in day-to-day is fairly easy for me, and just because I've been doing it for so long. So if you would see me do it, it would just look logical. Oh, yeah, that's how he does this. That's how he does that. Some stuff is a little bit more difficult just because of the mechanics of it. We were talking just before we went live on this about driving a little bit, you know, which is, it's definitely a challenge for me because, you know, there's laws and stuff. But as long as, you know, there aren't laws restricted me from doing something, or it being too difficult or too prohibitive, I mean, I would be open to learning a lot of stuff. I mean, some stuff I haven't approached yet. For example, I've never eaten with chopsticks yet. I've tried maybe 2 or 3 times, but I figure I can use a fork. So, I mean, I go through all the trouble.
That is so cool. I'm just picturing you now driving on the highway, making a few laws, and the cop comes and says, "Excuse me, would you please step out of your vehicle? Could I please see your driver's license?" And he's holding your driver's license. You say, "Is that my driver's license or the ace of spades?" I mean, you can have such fun on the highway. But now, obviously, from a typing point of view, how do you type messages and emails?
Most of my typing is, I don't know, it's fairly easy. I mean, I'm doing one key at a time, but I'm pretty fast at it, and I know where all the keys are, so I can type maybe 50 words per minute, which I think is average.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, I don't really have too much trouble with it, but again, it's just a practice thing, just doing things fast, and the same with my phone. Well, I guess with my phone, I usually use my right arm on my phone just because it's a little smaller at the
Mm-hmm.
end, so I have less surface area to hit the keys and stuff. So that's how I use my phone, just because you need that just, smaller surface area to hit keys.
And what about voice activated software that can do those things for you?
It's funny. I have a long history with it. It's definitely not new. I remember Ray Kurzweil's company was working on it back in
Mm-hmm.
maybe as far back as the 80s. But I remember starting to use it in the 90s, the early 2000s, and back then it was horrible, horrible.
Dragon Dictate. It was
Yeah, I
Dragon
mean,
Dictator.
yeah, it was horrible. And I remember I had the program and I would sit at the program and talk to it. You had to train the program. So I would talk to it for maybe 2 hours a day, and it still couldn't understand anything that I was saying. But the technology, which is why I have a lot of faith in technology, it's expanded so rapidly and improved so much that now in 2017, everybody, either if you have an iPhone or an Android or whatever you're using, the voice recognition is incredible. You don't have to train it. You don't have to. You don't even have to have talked to it before. You just say
Mm-hmm.
what you want to say, and it catches most of it perfectly. It might have some errors, depending on different factors, but it is so good, and I believe within the next few years it will just be perfect or near perfect, where we'll just use it for everything.
Then we don't have to write anymore. I mean, the art of writing is already missing from a lot of the kids because they spend so much time typing, but they can actually type faster than they write. And
Yeah.
eventually they're going to ask, why do we need to write?
Well, you got to send those secret messages in class, so I don't think it will.
You see, I knew that you would find a benefit. And if the teacher finds it, then you've got to make it disappear as well.
I mean, communication, I don't think we'll ever get to a point where we're fully just communicating with our mouths to our devices, just because there's like privacy reasons. Sometimes you're in public, you don't want to, say certain stuff out loud, or you want to, I don't think it's going to disappear, but it's definitely disappearing, which is unfortunate. I think spelling and grammar, understanding a language is very important, and it's actually quite frightening to see the younger generation who some of them can barely spell or write or even read. I mean,
Yeah, I know we see that a lot. So let me ask you this. I did an interview with Rob Gaunt, and he and his team developed an implant that you place in a person's brain, and they had a paraplegic patient, and he was able to mentally think what he wanted a prosthesis, the robotic arm, to do, and it did it. And then what they did was they blindfolded him and they wiggled different fingers. And because the feedback returned to his head, he could tell them which finger they were wiggling.
wow.
So that means that, I mean, obviously they're still in the early stages, but in a few years' time, they could literally put an implant in your head, two prosthetic arms on, and you could think how you want those hands to move. Would that be something that appeals to you?
If the technology got to a point where it was competent, like if it was enriching my life, like I believe in using any technology that makes your life easier or better. I don't think it's at that point yet for me. I think right now I'm so good at what I do with everything that I do, that it would actually be a burden on me. It would slow me down. It'd be frustrating to do some stuff that's so easy for me would become real monumental tasks. Turning on tap water and filling a cup with water and drinking. If I'm trying to figure out how to move every single finger on this device and close it around the cup tight enough so that it doesn't drop, but it also doesn't squeeze it and break the glass, or I think when the technology gets to the point where it's really good, I would be definitely interested, and I'm interested in seeing what they're coming up with, but I think it's going to be a couple years until I seriously look into it.
Well, you're quite patient, so it's not like you're rushing into anything.
Yeah, as I was saying, I'm waiting for these driverless cars. So
it's not that far away. I mean, Google have been doing it for a long time. Tesla, obviously, but the MD of Mercedes-Benz recently gave a talk, and one of the points that he mentioned was his competition is not the traditional car companies. It's Apple, it's Tesla, it's the software companies, because they are busy developing the things that will drive the cars of the future.
Yeah, and I mean, so much of it is software and who owns the software. I think one of the smartest things that Google did was expand away from their initial industry, which was just very limited back when they first started their search engine, getting into maps, getting into all the things that they've gotten into. I mean, I think just with Google Maps, there's so many avenues that has opened up for them as a company, from getting people to use Google Maps as their sort of go-to map application, that I mean, and it ties into restaurants that are in the area, businesses, everything, reviews, and then it ties into bus schedules, train schedules, everything that could have to do with anything. I mean, you have to realize with technology, it's correlated. So, I mean, we're talking about these technologies that are coming that are going to enhance our bodies. I think they're not only going to enhance our bodies, I think they're going to enhance our minds. And I think once it gets to that point, it'll be really interesting to see how we live our life. I mean, we're already so connected with these devices that we're using every day. I think the next step is integrating them with our bodies, and in more and more ways. I mean, you could say that right now, because I have prosthetic legs, that I'm integrated with technology on some level, even though it's not piercing my flesh or doing anything like that. But I think we're going to softly be using more and more technology, and as long as it's useful for us, we're going to jump onto it.
Well, you obviously haven't seen the latest prosthetics. There's a guy in South Africa who is working with prosthetic legs. I think they bring them in from Europe, and those cost several $100,000 because they are mechanical, but also there is computer software that runs these legs so that when you walk in a certain way, they can correct balance automatically, and they do a whole bunch of other things that regular prosthetics don't do. So tech and prosthetics they're on another level, but you need to have the money. A couple more magic shows and you should be okay. So now, are there any questions? We're going to find out from we've got a whole bunch of people. We've got Govind in Nepal. We've got Dondi in Hungary. We've got Mr. McNulty in the US, in Newtown. We've got Sebastian in India. Molly, I'm assuming, is one of the teachers in the US as well. So if you've got any students that would like to ask any questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself and get them to come up to the mic and ask the question. We'll give you a couple of seconds to see. Lorraine. Oh, Lorraine from the US. Is that? Maybe one of them is Lorraine. I don't know. I didn't see Lorraine. I know Govind is busy typing something there. If you want to, you can also type a text message and I'll read out your question on your behalf as well. So while we're waiting for the questions, when it comes to your disability, how did it happen? Were you born that way?
Yeah, no, I was born like this, and that's how I've been my whole life. So it's nothing, that happened to me when I was young or at a certain age, and I had to, relearn stuff. I was always like this. So,
So you've
but now,
never gone through a trauma per se, where something happened and then you then had to relearn everything. I mean, you don't know any different.
yeah, no, I don't. There was never, yeah, exactly what you're saying. There was
That is
never.
amazing. And from a professional point of view, who are your influences? Which magicians are the ones that you look up to most?
Um, the ones that I like the most are whoever, created something really interesting and sensational to the public. There are a lot of them. Uri Geller from Israel is a big influence on me.
Mhm.
David Payne, Darren Brown, obviously. Um, and then there's other magicians who I'm not so much in love with them artistically, but I look at them as great business models like David Copperfield.
Mhm.
And I find every single magician who I like has something that I like from them, whether it's an artistic thing, maybe it's a magician nobody's ever heard of who was never famous, but they did really beautiful magic or they had really interesting ideas. Um, so every person who I look up to, there's a different reason why I like them. But
And
those are
so, and the other thing I want to know is that about, was it 8 or 10 years ago, there was a magician that created a show where he revealed all the big tricks. I can't remember what it was called, Magic Unmasked or something like that.
there's been a couple shows like that. Magic's Greatest Secrets Revealed. Then there was a Masked Magician or Magic
Mhm.
Unmasked. I don't really remember what it was called.
What's your take on that?
Um, I think people are very interested in knowing how a magic trick works after they've seen it, but I also think that they don't really care. Like I don't think I think it's interesting for people to watch, which is why I think these shows are successful and they get made because people see the magician do a trick, and if he tells you, okay, now I'm going to show you how it's done, obviously they're going to watch the second part of that show right before the commercial. So it's
Hmm.
great for television. Um, but if you were to do that in real life, I think the audience would prefer um, just seeing the magic. So I don't know. I mean, my opinions on it. There are a lot of magicians who are really, really against it. I'm. I mean, I definitely don't support it, but I'm. It doesn't really upset me. It doesn't really matter to me. I don't feel like it takes away from what I'm doing or what anybody who's doing at a high level artistically or any other way. I don't think it detracts from it. So
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that by putting it out there, magicians now have to up their game. They've got to now reinvent new things, or they've got to reinvent old things, and they've got to develop new tricks because that's the only way they're going to, bring in the audiences. Although movies like, what was that movie with the illusions? Um, you know which one I'm talking about? They've now had a second one as well. Is it called The Illusionists?
catch your
Cat.
now you see me.
Now You See Me Now, that's the one. That has had huge following because of
Yeah.
the magic that they've done in those shows.
Yeah, I think the public has always been interested in the magic and things that are mysterious. And I think people are more and more interested in it today. I think the world used to be a lot more mysterious and magical than it is today. And now we live in an age where everything is explained. You know, you have everybody who can explain everything. If you don't know the answer to something, you can go on the internet and Google it, or go
Just
on YouTube
Google.
to figure out how. And there's always an expert. So magic is sort of the last thing which people don't really still know how it works. And I think that's why it appeals to people. And I don't think people want to know how everything works. I think I think we crave that experience of wonder that is lacking so much in our modern lives.
Sure. Well, I mean, magic has always been a big deal, and whenever I do I would call it a trick in front of the kids, they are always astounded. But then when it comes to the mathematical tricks, and I actually show them how it's done, I explain to them that often when you're in a math classroom, the problems seem quite astounding at first. But once you know the mechanics behind it, it's actually a lot easier than you think.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's a lot harder. It really depends on what you want to accomplish. There's some magic tricks, I'll give you an example. I went to go see David Copperfield's show in Las Vegas when I was over there.
Is he still performing?
He is every night. He performs, I think,
Wow.
600 shows a year. So he's a very big in Las Vegas. And there's an amazing part in the show which I don't want to ruin, but something massive appears in the theater, and you're thinking, this is impossible. How on earth could the magician sneak this into the theater right in front of us, under our very noses, and we not notice it? Like, this is massive. This is real. This
Uh-huh.
is not, this is not a hallucination. And something like that doesn't have a simple answer. So it has a very complicated and expensive answer, and it has to do with technology and different things combining. So there's very simple solutions to some magic, and sometimes very complicated solutions.
Uh-huh. And do you go to the magic shows and try and work out how they do everything, or do you know how they do everything?
I don't try to work out how to do everything. I've been reading magic books for about 15 years now, and going to see so many magician shows, and knowing and learning so much magic, that most of it I know how it works. Or if I see somebody do something, maybe I don't know the specifics of how it works, but I have a general idea of what's making it work or how it works. Um, yeah, so I don't go trying to decipher how it works. I usually know a little bit how it works, and sometimes I don't know how it works. And when I don't know how it works, I always love those moments, because it's a feeling that everybody else feels, that that you love when you see magic. That And I don't get to experience that as often, so I love experiencing that as well.
And obviously, you watch Fool Us because, I mean, generally that's when a lot of magicians are coming on and trying to do something original that will impress not only Penn and Teller, but people like you who actually know a little bit about the magic.
Yeah, and a lot of the magic has on the show has been very, very impressive, and it's also a great platform for magicians, because a lot of these magicians otherwise would never go on TV, just because I think TV, doing magic on TV, is a different world. Um, but Penn and Teller, they've produced the show in a way where they can bring on all these amazing magicians that not many people know about, that aren't world famous, but are still very good, and put them in front of millions of people so that they can experience their magic as well.
How did that show increase your profile?
It was very good for me. As I said, I was reluctant before the show to go on, because I had many mixed feelings about magic, and also you're not really in control of a TV show the same way you are as a performance. In a performance, you're controlling what the audience sees. On TV, they have many cameras on you. Maybe they catch something at a bad angle, they put it in front of millions of people. It's
Ah,
So you have to really think out what you want to do. And there have been friends of mine who have been on other shows, David Letterman and the different nighttime shows, performing magic, and the filmers or the editors of the show didn't care so much about preserving the secrets, so they filmed them from bad angles, or they just cut in a bad angle, and you see how the magic is done, and
That's not so good.
it's not so. But these guys are really professional, and that's why they hire magicians on the show to help with the editing and the filming, just to make sure everything looks great for TV, and so that you can move ahead confident, knowing that your magic is going to look as good as it looks in real life on TV.
That is awesome. Now, um, there's a form of magic where people like David Blaine and Chris Angel and those guys, they start doing death-defying stunts where
Yeah,
it's a little bit of magic, a little bit of mind play, but they are doing things that are rather dangerous. And they certainly get the attention of people. I mean, Harry Houdini did it years ago when he hung himself upside down by a chain, being an escape artist and putting himself naked in a jail cell to prove that he wasn't, cheating in any way. But some of these stunts obviously can cause death.
yeah. As everything, you take risks in the work that you do, and I'm, for the most part, against doing things on stage which are dangerous. Um, I don't like there to be real risk. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want anybody on stage to get hurt or anybody in the audience to get hurt. Um, so I'm not a huge fan of that. Although it's complicated, I'm not opposing it either. I think what Houdini does and David Blaine does is great. It's just I feel like when you're in front of so many people, you become a role model, whether you want to or not, and people are going to look at you and be influenced by your actions. So, I, me personally, I would want to do things that I would always want to encourage people to do stuff that's in their best interest, not something that maybe they can get hurt.
Well, I mean, this is the thing that, when you are on TV or you are doing high profile entertainment, you are a role model whether you like it or not, as you said. And some people choose to do things that gets them more attention and obviously more business, because at the end of the day, you've got to put bread on the table. And others prefer to stick with the principle of saying, I could probably get more business if I did it this way, but my heart tells me that if kids are watching this, they're going to go home and try and put a nail through their hand over a cup, and that's probably a very dangerous thing to do, that type
It's
of thing.
extremely dangerous, and people have also, magicians and others have also gotten killed doing tricks like the bullet catch,
Mm-hmm.
which is a trick where a magician catches a bullet from a loaded gun. And most of the time, when these things are done, they look real, and they're supposed to look real. They're supposed to look 100% real, but they're not supposed to actually be dangerous. However, you have some magicians who maybe aren't as good, maybe they can't think of creative solutions to actually keep everything safe. So they have made it dangerous for themselves, and they've become very hurt, or in some cases, even killed during performances. So I'm definitely not supporting that. I don't think it's worth anybody,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in a magic show, at least not on salary.
Well, I mean,
uh,
I've been noticing that on America's Got Talent, in order to get noticed amongst all the noise, you have to make more noise. And the stunts that they pull on some of those shows are getting bigger and bolder and far more dangerous, that you actually almost feel a little uncomfortable when you're watching some of those stunts.
I think it's a problem not only in magic, but in many industries. I see it all the time in many industries. Just because you're using a tactic or strategy that's effective, it doesn't mean that it's good. And
Mhm.
I think for me, anyways, I look at what I do from an artistic approach, and I want things to feel a certain way, and I would never degrade what I'm doing by um, just by giving people, stuff that's just not as high quality. And you have it
Mm.
in on the internet, you have stuff like clickbait, which is somebody will put a video up or a title up of an article or an ad where it's like, oh, look at this. And then you
Hmm.
go there, you're disappointed. So, I mean, I think the most important thing is just to do high quality in whatever you're doing. If somebody comes to you and they don't know what to expect, I never want somebody to be let down by me. I want them to come and their expectations to be exceeded, not, to come and be let down. So that's what I would recommend everybody do and whatever they're doing. Under be humble, under advertise, and then over deliver. Just overwhelm people with the quality of what you're doing.
I like it. Under promise and over deliver. So
Yeah.
I know, Mr. McNulty, your group, you have any students with you? No, they've left already.
Not yet.
Not me. Okay. And Dondi and Sebastian, if you've got any questions, and Govinda, please feel free to do so. I'm just going to mute Mr. McNulty there. So the other thing is, when are you going to be on America's Got Talent?
They've asked me to be on the show. It's funny. I don't know how it usually works, which is why TV to me is so deceptive in a way. In America's Got Talent, you would think that everybody goes to apply to be on the show, but they actually called me because they wanted me to be on the show. So we're talking about that. So hopefully next year I will be on the show, and we'll see what happens with that.
Well, you see, they like a good story. But there's got to be a good backstory. So when you come along and you say, and you've got to cry in your backstory, it's very important that you grew up without hands, and then you burst into tears, and someone has to bring you a tissue because you can't grab it for yourself. And then they think, how's he going to do a magic trick? I mean, you've got to really milk it. And I mean, that's okay. That's not too much theatrics. And they got someone with a violin in the background there. And then when they finished, then they realize they're not even playing with the bow. You've got the bow, and they are playing with your serviette or something. And then they'll be like, wow, this guy's brilliant. So now, Govinda wanted to know, are you able to do a magic trick for us?
Right now, I don't have anything on me right now, just because I was doing some stuff in the morning, cooking and some stuff. But I do have something for your listeners, which I think they'll like, and I'll give you the link. But I'm working on a book that a magician wrote in the 1950s, and it's called The Book of Oopses, and I'll send it to you guys all for free. But it's basically a book that does magic for you. All you do is you read the instructions, and the book will fool you. You'll do things, and the book will read your different things will happen. And it's really, really cool. So the magician who originally wrote it, he wrote it in the 1940s or 50s. He was from Israel, and nobody's seen it in maybe 60 or 70 years. So I'm excited to make it new for people today who have never seen anything like this. It's a book that can read people's minds. It's really cool.
That is awesome. So you'll send me the link, and I'll post it with the YouTube video, and make sure that at least we've got something to share with the viewers as well. And in terms of, and Govinda said thanks, in terms of the future, where do you think you're going to be heading with your magic, and what do you want to do with your magic, your in terms of developing your style, and what is it that we should be expecting of Mahdi Gilbert in the future?
Yeah, I'm always working on new stuff, and I'm working on the show that I would love to have put up somewhere. I'm right now trying to find a home for my show, like a venue that I can do the show every night and get people to see it. But other than that, just using the technology, TV and the radio and the internet, just to get my magic out as far as I can into the world. Just because it seems to be a very effective tool today. I mean, you can do, 10,000 shows and maybe only, you know, 1 million people will see you, and it'll take you 10 years to do that. Whereas you can go on a TV show and within 10 minutes or 5 minutes, you have 5 million people or 10 million or 20 million people seeing you. And the same thing with the internet. It's just really great at equalizing and concentrating the attention that's given towards different things. So I definitely think it's the way of the future for everything.
I think you've left out one little avenue, and that is the corporate gigs. I think that if you've got a good story and you can tie it in with productivity and overcoming obstacles and that sort of thing, corporates pay good money to have you come in and do that, and you do less work for more money. That's also not such a bad thing.
Yeah, I've done a couple of corporate events, and I'm trying to do more and more because, as you said, I can present a presentation that has to do with solutions and productivity and creative thinking that they're interested in, and make it entertaining at the same time. So I am looking to do more of those things in the future. Um, yeah, it's just I just want to perform magic for as many people and share what I'm doing with as many
How
people.
do you come up with new magic? Do you take an old trick and go, can I put a new spin on it? Or do you think, well, you know what? I want to move this from A to B. Now let's invent a way to make it happen. How do you invent new magic?
Um, uh, I don't know. Sometimes it always comes differently every single time. Sometimes I have an idea and I'll write it down. It's not a full idea. It's just like a concept, like an image or something that I think would look really cool or magical. And other times I'm walking around and I see a new technology or something like that, which I don't know what I'm going to do with yet or what can be done, but I know that it's interesting and that maybe I can figure something out. So I just try to collect all these different things and then meld them together. So it's a slow process of finding presentations, finding methods, and finding the props that could tell your story the best way, the most efficient way possible.
Well, I mean, with technology, you could 3D print props. You can do so many things online. You can order. I don't know about you, but I know that in Cape Town, we've got the College of Magic, which is a very well-known and respected school of magic, and kids come along and do it as an extramural. And then many of them get to go and perform at the Magic Castle, at the big magic conventions. And then they also bring a couple of magicians down to South Africa to perform. And hopefully we'll get to see the likes of Mahdi Gilbert in South Africa, because you haven't visited, have you?
I have never been to Africa yet, so if somebody would love to bring me to Africa, I would love to go. I've never been.
So we're going to plant a little seed, because at the moment we are going to be launching our space tour, and we have an astronaut coming to Cape Town in October, and then we'll take him around to Durban and Johannesburg and do a little bit of touring as well. So maybe we need to look at a magic tour as well.
My schedule is definitely.
That would be cool. That would be cool. And now you're doing a lot of gigs at schools as well?
I am. I've been doing more and more these days. I started it not too long ago doing it for schools, but I'm doing more and more schools, speaking at schools, and my speaking has magic in it, so it's very entertaining, but it's also, against bullying and also how to get these kids to develop dreams and also pursue them and finally reach them.
Did you ever encounter bullying when you were at school?
Um, uh, Not necessarily, not really at school, but I think I mean, I think everybody does, but I was very effective at ending it, and I believe that there's strategies that you can use, and also just mindsets that some children don't necessarily have. Maybe they're not born with it, or maybe nobody's giving them good advice, or they don't really know how to deal with these situations. So, um, it's lowering their quality of life because of that. So, yeah, I mean, my talk does go into that, and hopefully, it's helping a lot of kids out there.
Well, I'm sure. I'm just wondering, Joe and Amy, do you guys have a question that you'd like to ask? Let's see if he's got a question for you.
You know, my daughter Amy, she's a big fan of America's Got Talent. We heard you mention that. Have you tried out for the show, or are you planning on trying out?
Yeah, no, they've asked me to be on the show. So we're just working out the details of me going down there and being on the show. And yeah, so I most likely will be on the next season. So hopefully I will have more to say about that once, it's finalized. But I
We'll be
love
looking
that
for you.
show.
We'll be
Great,
looking
thank you.
for you. That's great. Good luck.
Thank you.
That is awesome. I think, that what is amazing is that you've got platforms like America's Got Talent and you've got Fool Us, where people who normally would be doing the club scene and maybe a couple of school visits and trying to build up their persona, all of a sudden become household names because of an appearance on a TV show. I mean, I don't know how many people have viewed your video, your YouTube video of the Penn and Teller appearance.
I think all in all, if you combine the TV performances with the online views, it must be somewhere around 10 million.
Can you
So,
even like picture that number of people in your head would be looking at your magic?
uh, no, it's pretty crazy, but that's the magic of technology. It just connects you with all these people around the world.
Sure. Well, if you were going to give any message to young people who want to get into magic, or to people who are adults and would like to get into magic, what sort of advice would you give them?
I would say download the book that I'm going to be giving you the link to, because it's a great sort of introduction into it. And also, the author is really clever, um, because not every trick in the book is 100%, and he'll guide you through that. But if a trick is 100%, he'll tell you, this is very interesting. If you go back and are really clever, go through this and try to figure out why this works. And I believe everybody has their own journey discovering magic. We have different schools teaching magic. I've given people lessons and done stuff like that and taught magic. But for everybody, it's their sort of own path. I would recommend them to use whatever resource they have available. And that's what I recommend to do for anything in their life. If you want to learn anything, just, if you don't have the internet, find somebody. If you, what if whatever resources you have, just use them as best as you can to realize your purpose.
Are you the only magician without hands?
Yeah, there was only one other magician like me who was born in 1674. Uh,
That's about
and
a couple of years ago.
yeah, so he's the only one other than me, and he was quite a sensational character in his day.
So did he ever write books or texts or was there any information about him that you might be able to use in your performances?
There's very little information, but there's enough that I can decipher pretty much his whole show and different stuff. And he was also an artist, so most of what exists from him are pieces of his artwork in different private collections around the world. And some at some public museums, but um, he was quite a sensation, but not a lot is known about him. It's funny, I think because he was so different, the one of the fact that he had no hands or no legs was so overstated that people forgot to record all the other details as well because it was so.
But they never had the internet in those days either. I mean, he would have been big news back then if there was the internet.
Yeah, well, he was very famous in his time, and you know, now people can write things on blogs, or they can make, you know, a YouTube review or write a Yelp review, and we only have a few first-hand accounts of his show from people who saw a show, and they were not writing for the public; they were writing in their diaries, and they were writing what he did in his show. So that's where we got a lot of information about him from, just from people's private recollections of how he was and what he did.
When are we going to get the Mahdi Gilbert autobiography?
I'm writing a book right now, which is called Before Magic, Living the Impossible, which is an autobiography, and it's also a book of magic. It teaches you magic and tells you some of the great history of magic, some of the historical characters, and it's also my autobiography. And I am writing that right now, so I don't know. I really don't have a release date, but I have a mailing list. So if anybody wants to go on either my website, mahdithemagician.com, or beforemagic.com, which is my company, which is going to publish my book and other magic things, you can go on those websites and put in your email, and you'll get first news on when we launch updates.
Awesome, awesome. I hope you're going to enhance the book with a little bit of augmented reality, because that would be quite exciting.
I'm considering it. I'm highly considering it.
Because, I mean, can you imagine if you take your cell phone and put it over an image, then you actually see how the hands move. You can actually see a video, three-dimensional video of how the hands move. It really does change the way you read the text and then understand it from a visual point of view.
Yeah, I mean, if I can, I have a few friends who are involved with creating augmented reality. So I'm trying to look into it and do it. If it's not too expensive or too crazy to do, I will definitely do it because I think it would be really cool.
Well, I mean, it's quite simple. You can make a YouTube video of you doing a trick or getting someone to demonstrate a certain trick. And then what you could do is either put a trigger on an image and make the image the trigger to play the YouTube video, or you can just put a QR code next to the text, and if they scan the QR code, then the video starts to play.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking into all that stuff because, I mean, I think, yeah, I love tying things into technology. I love technology, and it would be really cool to have that.
I think so. But now time, unfortunately, has come to an end, and we had guests from India, Kenya, Hungary, the USA, South Africa, Nepal. We did quite nicely. We had a whole bunch of people who were viewing the live broadcast as well. So we're going to ask Mahdi if he could just smile at the camera so we can get one or two screenshots. There we go. Let's go like this. And let's see if it's behaving itself. We'll try one more time. That's it. There we go. And we thank you so much for your time. We are definitely going to be looking forward to your next appearance on America's Got Talent. I don't know what trick you're going to do. I'm sure that if you did your card trick, that would certainly work very well. But somehow, I've got a funny feeling that's not your best trick. You've probably got something hidden under your armpits.
I have a few tricks up my sleeve, but definitely if people want to see more of what I'm doing, they can find me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Mahdi the Magician. I'm also on Facebook, all over the place. I have 2 television appearances soon. One is in about 2 weeks, in Portugal. So after that gets posted on TV, I'll post that online on my channel, and
Awesome.
I also have another television performance in European television, which will come out in November. So I'll also post that. So just go on my channel, my Instagram, my different social media accounts. Find me, Mahdi the Magician, and you'll find the links. I'm sure you'll post them all in the video. And
I already have. If they go onto the YouTube channel, they'll see all the video links.
great, perfect. Thank
Awesome.
you so much.
Maddie, thank you so much, and we wish you all the best of luck, and we'll be in touch. I'll send you all the video links and all the photos and stuff a little bit later on today.
Great. Thank you so
Cool.
much, everyone, for watching.
Thanks. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.